Now we want to take this cover off that covers the solenoids and take a look at a few things in here. It's fairly straightforward, just a couple of nuts. And these solenoids do all the switching and the activation of the thruster. So they're responsible not only for turning it on, but also for your directional controls. Once again, you're seeing a lot of big connectors. Whenever you see large wires, think high current, think these are really important, that you need to keep them tight and clean. That's what's really feeding your thruster. You'll also see some smaller connectors here. These are lower current connections, very small wires. These don't carry the same amount of current, same amount of voltage, but less current. But these are also important. These are important so that the thing activates when you need it to. These need to be clean. So let's take a closer look at these. These large connections on the sides of the motor, you want to be very careful about these. These studs go into the motor. And if you go and just start cranking on these things to tighten them up, you run the risk of spinning this stud and damaging your motor, because these studs go actually into the windings of the motor in most cases. On one side, they definitely will be. So what you always want to do is you want to use 2 wrenches. We put little tags on the motor that tell you to do this. They're paper over years, they fall off, or the installer takes them off. So when you go to tighten these connections, you always want to put a wrench on the bolt behind and then use another wrench to tighten these fittings. Consult your manual for the proper tightening torque. It's typically 6.5 to 8 foot-pounds or 9 to 11 Newton meters if you want to go metric. Same deal, check for loose connections. If you see anything that's loose or that's corroded, you're going to want to take it apart, clean it, put it back together again, and check everything first. So it's usually pretty simple. On these, you can tighten like that. Now we're going to talk about the small connections. These small connections are what drive the unit. These are basically control connections, okay? So these are what are going up to your joystick up in your dashboard and are turning on the big high current connections up here. So they're activating little electromagnets here, solenoid coils. So these are also important, and we want to make sure that those are clean. So we're going to take these off. Do yourself a favor, take them off one at a time so that you remember how they go on. But you're going to want to take them off one at a time. Clean them if they're dirty. A little electronic cleaner, even a toothbrush, or if you have some very fine sandpaper, you can clean these up. Hit them a little bit. Put everything back on. And a little bit of a protectant is helpful too, because it's also going to keep corrosion away from these connections. So the other connection you want to take a look at now, the main control cable connection. It's pretty simple, pops off, real easy. There's some pins and connections in here. Same kind of deal, hit them with a little cleaner. If they're really corroded, if this thing's been in a damp locker and you see they're all green, probably a good time to replace them. And we sell replacement harnesses and replacement cables. So really easy, simple one. The other one to check while you're here, right here. There is a 5-amp fuse. This little fuse, because it's pretty small, this controls the low current connections basically back to this. If you ever get down to your boat, this isn't turning on, but all your main power connections are on, check this little fuse. There's 2 fuses on this thruster. There's a little one for the low current control side. There's a big fuse with a big on-off switch, typically hidden somewhere on the boat or on the dashboard via a big contactor. Always check with a voltmeter here. Make sure that you don't have current to this thing, that this thing's not live. A lot of current, big cables, obviously something you need to be very careful with.